Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of The Snake Pit. I'm your host, Son of Bat, and if you saw the last episode, then you'll know I talked about the original Friday the 13th. More specifically, I talked about some of the rip-offs or clone movies that came out after that first one. You know, films like Sleepaway Camp, The Burning, Madman, and one that I called Bloody Nightmares, but what I actually meant to say was Bloody Murder. I think I was mixing up Nightmares and a Damaged Brain and Bloody Murder together. It was late when I did that review, you know, whatever. But yeah, Bloody Murder 1 and 2, I'd say are more direct Friday the 13th ripoffs, whereas movies such as Sleepaway Camp, The Burning, and Madman kind of tell their own thing and they have their own fan bases. Like Sleepaway Camp has like 4 sequels, so it definitely tells its own story. It's more than just a Friday the 13th ripoff. And Madman and The Burning kind of both like rip on each other, but those are both based off Cropsey, which is a completely different story. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that these take place at summer camp. So, you know, basic people kind of just lump it all together as Friday the 13th ripoffs because that was the more commercially successful one or whatever. But the movie I'm talking about today is most definitely a Friday the 13th like ripoff, or, you know, I want to say love letter. It's a micro-budgeted movie. The first one was made for only $50, and the second one was only made for $100, and it was shot on a home video camera in the summer of 1988 by two brothers, the Wilkerson brothers. Of course, I'm talking about The Violence Movie and The Violence Movie Part 2. You know, these movies, like I said, they're shot on video. I love shot on video movies. You know, a lot of them can be really, really bad. And then even the good ones, like, you know, for example, Video Violence, as much as I love that movie, I think some scenes drag on a little too long. So they kind of wear out their welcome. You can binge them, but it can be pretty hit or miss. This one is interesting because, like I said, it was only 13 minutes. So even if it was bad, it's pretty quick. So it's not like you're torturing yourself. But, you know, I can't really like shit on these movies too hard because growing up as a kid, like me and my friends used to make our own kind of horror movies in the backyard and shit. And watching this, you definitely get that vibe. This is just two brothers bonding over their love of the slasher genre, Friday the 13th specifically. And you can't really fault them for any of the ineptitude that shows up because, again, they're just teenagers. Like, they're just fucking around and having fun. And I think to really be harsh on this would be like kind of a dick move. It's just an entertaining 13 minutes to kill. And the interesting thing too is on this DVD released by MVD, they got Harry Manfredini to rescore the movie. So you got that official Friday the 13th soundtrack, like chef's kiss on here, which makes it pretty funny at times because you're like, wow, like this definitely is part of that fucking universe on some level. You know, no, I'm just kidding. But like, it's just cool. It's cool that the composer for the original movie recognized how much love was put into these two, that he willingly scored them. Yeah, like I said, made for $50, so the gore isn't like great, but it's not bad. Like, there's some pretty good use of practical effects. You know, the first movie is essentially the killer breaks out of jail and he goes to this guy Joey's house, played by Joseph Shaughnessy, and the killer's played by one of the brothers, David Wilkerson, and I believe Eric Wilkerson was the cameraman. He also has a short cameo role as the best friend, but I'll get more on that later. Essentially, most of this movie is Joey and the killer kicking the shit out of each other in the house and outside the house, and then they both fuck each other up, and then Joey pretty much gets murdered by the killer upstairs. There's this scene where the killer gets his head chopped off with a shovel and he puts it back on, so we definitely know he's a supernatural being, kind of like Jason. But I always thought it was funny because for it being a Friday the 13th ripoff, the killer for most of the movie is wearing a Freddy Krueger mask, and there's a lot of Freddy Krueger posters up in the bedroom where the final fight takes place, so I always thought that was pretty funny. Although the killer does switch masks and does get the Jason mask after his head is chopped off, so goes back into the Friday the 13th sphere, but again, it's more like the old school hockey mask, like not really the Jason variant. Like, this one has square holes, and it does have the red triangles painted on, but it has a Friday the 13th Part 5 vibe, you know, like in the opening credits. It looks like a Jason mask, but it doesn't at the same time. Yeah, it's funny, man. It's a fun 13 minutes to sit through. Again, not great, but still entertaining. I've definitely seen worse. Like, there's one that I'll hopefully cover at some other point called City of the Vampires, and that movie, that one took a while to sit through. That was not as fun as this. But yeah, shot on video, it can be very hit or miss. Like, I know a lot of people aren't really fans of it. It's almost like first person, like camera found footage type movies. People just have a gripe with it, and I don't know. I like giving everything a chance, from fan movies all the way up to like AAA ones. If the passion's there and you enjoy what you're doing and like telling the story, then there's no reason to like really just shit on it. I think movies start getting bad when the soul's gone, and this movie had tons of soul. Like you can tell, like they used every asset to make this as watchable and as entertaining for them and their friends as they could. And I believe this was actually passed around on bootleg tapes for like, a few years at conventions and stuff. So this definitely has the vibe of a viral video. Watching it, I couldn't help but think of YouTube short films and stuff like the ones I remember seeing in the early 2000s. And it just had me have a big smile on my face. And like, I couldn't hate this movie. On a technical standpoint, again, shot on video, micro budget. I don't want to be like a dick saying this, but I'd probably give this movie about like a 6 because it's not for everyone, but it's definitely enjoyable. And for the runtime that it goes at, it doesn't overstay its welcome. So you could do definitely worse than, the Violence Movie Part 1. If you want to find like something to kill 13 minutes and have a laugh, rip some bong hits and just fuck around and watch a Friday the 13th ripoff, check this one out because it is pretty funny. And who knows, it might inspire somebody to take up the mantle and make a Violence Movie 3 or something of their own. It's a really cool thing when fans, get creative and make their own shit. So yeah, that's the Violence Movie Part 1. Part 2, like I said, I don't know if this was released in 1988 because I can't really find a date to confirm it, but this pretty much stars the exact same cast as the last one. Shit, I forgot to mention, Eric, he plays the best friend, and he shows up in the first movie, and he's like, I'm the best friend, and then he just gets his throat slit, which is pretty funny. But Part 2 basically picks up right after the first one. And Joey wakes up from a nightmare, and it's all footage from the first movie. So we find out that the Violence Movie 1 was actually just a dream. So he goes downstairs trying to shrug it off, and he watches some TV, and then a news report comes on about how some killer escaped from prison with the same height and the same appearance. So he freaks out, and he's like, oh no, it was real. The killer inexplicably shows up at Joey's house again, but this time sporting a boiler coat, more close to Michael Myers. But this time we cut straight to him getting the hockey mask. This time it has a chip going through it, kind of like Jason's did in Part 4 onward. And, it was pretty cool to see him go straight for the mask. More of the same, fist fights throughout a house and stuff. But this time we get a car chase. We get some like pulling around. Obviously a dummy hanging onto the car, but still pretty funny. Definitely gives you like CKY stunt vibes and shit, which was pretty cool to see. But yeah, this movie ends with a fucking showdown between the killer and Joey. The killer has a chainsaw. Joey has a bow and arrow. They get into a scuffle. That reminded me of the end of Goonies when they're trying to get across the fucking plank of wood that's covered in grease. And Joey fucking hits the killer in the face with a bow and arrow shot. He finds the club that he had from Part 1 mysteriously in the bushes. There's a fight on a rooftop. There's a lot of like... The stakes have been raised in this one, that $100 definitely went a long ways because the stunts get a little bit more risky, the gore's a little bit better, and the weapons got a fucking much needed upgrade. But this movie pretty much just ends with Joey getting murdered by the killer, not before he rips his arm off though. Then the killer gets his arm and jams it through Joey's head. That was a pretty cool effect achieved with what they had and the stuff, like the effects that was a pretty cool effect they had for the amount of effects they had and the training they had. It all came together pretty cool. I'm tripping over my words. The zins got me fucked up. I smoked a bunch of joints before I watched this movie because I knew it was going to be, a spectacle. But, Part 2, it definitely, I actually liked Part 2 a lot more. It was a little bit longer, but it felt more fluid. It felt like they had the formula down and they were basically just correcting anything that they might have, mixed up on or screwed up with Part 1. Although the ending for this one is pretty confusing. Like the arm going through the head and all that shit just came out of nowhere, and then there's a machete on the ground that was never there. I think this probably was just battery packs being shifted out and then them coming back the next day and redoing the ending, but I don't know. It still didn't ruin it. It was a fun 20 minutes to kill. Like the first movie, I don't think I can really trash on this too much because it would just be unfair and a dickish move. It's just two brothers and their friends just fucking around and making a movie for fun, and you can't really get mad at people for doing that. However, like I said, I do enjoy this one more than the first one, so I probably have to give this one about a 7.5 to an 8. Um, shot on video movies, what can I say? There's a lot of them out there, and I've seen a decent amount of them that I can fairly say this is one of the ones I enjoyed more because it didn't overstay its welcome. It was charming. It was like funny. It hit the right spots. It didn't feel like a drag. It didn't take forever to get through. It told its story, even though it might have been paper thin. But it just did what it did. It was a Friday the 13th clone. There's an immortal killer going around fucking shit up. However, the body count is pretty small in these movies, but what do you expect? It wasn't a huge problem. I found this DVD randomly, actually, because I think I was going on a shot on video binge right after I got Video Violence and like Cannibal Campout. I was like, yo, I need to see more of these. So I ended up just getting a whole fucking bunch of them. And then I came across this one randomly. And by looking at the cover, I immediately assumed like, oh, this is going to be like the shot on video equivalent of Friday the 13th. Like, this is going to be fucking wild, like this is going to be like some trauma-esque level shit, And, I brought it home and I put it on and I was surprised by how short the movie was. And I'm like, this ain't a normal shot on video. This is like a home movie. Like, this is very personal. This isn't just some cash grab. This is somebody's passion project. So I thought that was cool, and it definitely makes a unique addition to the horror collection. It's funny because I can successfully say I have movies that were made for $50 all the way up to movies that were made for millions of dollars. And it's really interesting to see the different caliber of filmmaker from low budget to like mid budget to high budget, and just, yeah, it's just rambling. It's just cool to see people, get off their ass and make their own shit, and I can't be mad at people for doing that, and I can't shit on people for doing that. Like, there's people out there who would probably shit on this, who have never made anything in their lives regarding to film or uploads or anything, and it's really easy to sit in the comment section and shit on people for doing it, but it's actually fairly difficult, to like get your shit together and to say everything you want to say, and or like make the thing you want to make and have it come out how you want it to, because it doesn't always come out how you want it to, you know what I mean? It's a grueling process, and I respect people who take the challenge and do it. So the Violence movie 1, that's a 6, and the Violence movie 2, 7.5 to an 8. If you can find this DVD, I got it for about $10, so I think it was pretty worth it, especially with the audio commentary, the unreleased version of Violence movie 2 with commentary, deleted scenes. There's just a whole bunch of stuff on here that's really cool. There's some nice reversible artwork because it comes in a clear case. If you find this and you're into shot on video or Friday the 13th, pick it up. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. This was just a short little review. I was actually picked this because I was thinking about doing Sleepaway Camp or The Burning or something, but I figured I'd want to save those for later, maybe do one of those reviews with Phantom or Son of Monster at some point. So I figured I'd put those on the back burner and just do the Violence movie because they're both short and I could slam through them. So I hope you guys found these interesting. If you can find them, check them out. I recommend them. They're a good little time, like I said, for some bong rips and shit. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back with the next one. Peace.